You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and have I got a show for you today? Last show before the elections. Joy Reid is here. She, of course, is the star reporter and political analyst for MSNBC and also host of MSNBC's AM Joy. And Anne Holton is with us. She has a career as a distinguished judge and as Secretary of Education in the state of Virginia, Commonwealth of Virginia, and she happens to be married to a man named Tim Kaine, who is Hillary Clinton's running mate for vice president. All that coming up, but first we need to go inside the headlines. Since we're about to observe Veterans Day on November 11th, it is sadly fitting to point out that this past summer the Department of Veterans Affairs released key findings from a study they had just completed, which noted that the suicide rate among veterans has surged 35% since 2001. Of particular concern is the suicide rate among women vets, which has increased 85% in that time. Though female veterans commit suicide at lower rates than their male colleagues, those younger than 30 are more than 6 times as likely to take their own lives as women in the civilian world. A bill in Congress would require the VA to create better treatment options that are specifically geared toward women who have different health needs. In fact, when veterans use the Department of Health Services, it dramatically lowers increases in suicide rates, 78% lower among men and 95% lower among women. So that's the bill in Congress that we need to get behind. Now, some things just seem not to change, including the NFL and domestic violence. After all the scandals over the past couple of years and all of their reassurances that they were taking this so seriously, here we go again. In the case of Giants kicker Josh Brown, the league has shown it can't care less about women, and it really doesn't want to call out players for doing bad things to women. Brown was arrested in 2015 and charged with assaulting his wife at the time, Molly. Police and court records documented that Brown had assaulted her nearly 24 times, including at least once when she was pregnant. So the league, fluent action, investigated the matter for 10 months, sent in its crack #1 investigative team, whose stated goal was to dig for the truth, and in the end, Brown was suspended for 1 game, a single game. And the NFL claimed that, it was not their fault because the investigators didn't find much since Brown's wife failed to cooperate. So they blamed the victim. I mean, this is extraordinary because if the NFL had done the slightest study of domestic violence cases at all, it would know that putting the onus on the abused woman to make the case against her abuser and do that to the abuser's employer, no less, is hardly the way to consider. It's hardly the way to get the actual truth. Boo again to the NFL. They obviously will change only when it hurts them at the box office. Now for a news item that has, let's hear it for context, because often context hides precisely inside the headlines, deep inside the headlines. So let's just talk about email and context, shall we? When the Bush administration was discovered to have erased millions of emails illegally sent by 22 administration officials through private RNC-owned accounts, this is Bush the son, in order to thwart an investigation into the politically motivated firing of 8 U.S. attorneys, one talk show covered it that Sunday, only one. When Mitt Romney, when he was governor, wiped servers, sold government hard drives to his closest aides, and spent $100,000 in taxpayer money to destroy his administration's emails, it was barely an issue. When Colin Powell was asked by Hillary Rodham how he managed his email accounts when Secretary of State. Of course, he now famously replied, "I had a personal computer hooked up to a private phone line," sounds ancient, "so I could communicate with a wide range of friends directly without going through the State Department servers. I even did use it to do business with some foreign leaders and some of the senior folks in the State Department on their personal email accounts." And last but never least, Donald Trump himself. You remember that famous case, well, it was the first of a number of them, I guess, in the 70s when the government filed its case against Trump father and son for racial discrimination. And of course, when this came to light again, Trump attacked. He falsely declared to reporters that the feds had no evidence that he and his father had discriminated. But instead, they were attempting to force him and his father to lease to welfare recipients who couldn't pay their rent. Anyway, finally, under subpoena, all those years ago, Trump did appear for a short deposition, which he doesn't deny to this day. When he was asked about the missing documents, he made a shocking admission. The Trumps had been destroying their corporate records for the previous 6 months and had no document retention program. Yeah, they had conducted no inspections to determine which files might have been sought in the government's discovery requests or might otherwise be related to the case. Instead, in order to save space, Trump testified, officials with his company had tossed documents into the shredder and garbage. That's a story that you can find on Newsweek. Just a little context inside the headlines. And finally, the loss of a great woman, Junko Tabei, who climbed Everest, the first woman to do so, died at 77 of cancer. She made the 29,029-foot ascent, the world's tallest mountain, of Turquoise Mother, as the Nepalese call the mountain, in May 1975. She was 35 years old, and she was the co-leader of a 15-woman expedition guided by 6 Sherpas. She said among her numerous quotes that one of the reasons she did this was because even women who have jobs are asked just to serve tea and told that we should be raising children instead of wanting to climb to great heights. She also was the first woman by 1992 to mount the 7 summits all over the world. And she told the Japan Times when she retired, "I never felt like stopping climbing, and I never will." Junko Tabei. It's time for a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and when I come back, we're going to find out from a star journalist just what, if anything, the media has learned from this interminable election and how it might change in the future and how it might not. That's coming right up.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. My first guest is Joy Reid, returning to the program a second time. Joy, of course, is the well-known television political pundit. You see her on many programs on MSNBC and elsewhere. She is the writer and editor of the blog The Reid Report, and she is the MSNBC political analyst who is also the host of AM Joy, which is Saturdays and Sundays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and is one damn good program. Here is Joy Reid. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live again. It's good to have you back.
Always great to talk to you, Robin. Thanks for having me on.
Well, you know I'm such a fan. I was a fan back at the Reid Report, and I'm so I'm so delighted about AM Joy. For any listeners who don't know, who've been on Mars, it's from 10 to 12 on Saturdays and Sundays on MSNBC. And it is the one on Sundays, and for that matter on Saturdays too, but especially on Sundays, it is the one voice that is a female journalist and a journalist of color in that whole panoply of Sunday morning political talk shows. You're it, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that it does go unnoticed sometimes in media, that we don't have nearly enough women or people of color doing this job, and I think we definitely need to have more.
Well, I mean, if you flip back and forth on any given Sunday between, I don't know, I mean, even good people like, Meet the Press, with Chuck, it doesn't matter. All the pale males, some of them good, some of them, in my opinion, not so much. And then, you flip back and forth between you and them. And when watching you, it's like an eye patch has been removed from one of one's eyes. And suddenly you're seeing the whole world in color. You're seeing it with depth perception. You're seeing it with peripheral vision. It's a very different holistic take. It really is.
Well, I mean, I think even with one of the, principles of the Women's Media Center that you guys advance so well is that, men and women have different perspectives, different life perspectives that we bring to the table.
Yep.
And people of color and white Americans have different perspectives we bring to the table. And I think one of the reasons you have to have more diversity in media, both gender and racial diversity, is that you are missing a perspective. We can't have the entire world interpreted just by, as you said, the pale males, because
right.
That's how it's always been on Sunday morning.
Yep.
But I think that it's high time that we added the voices of people of color. Well, one of the things we try to do on AM Joy is we keep our desks very diverse. Sometimes you'll have a panel where everyone is African American, but there's ideological diversity and gender diversity there. Or the panel will be multi-ethnic, but everyone has a unique perspective. Some are journalists, some are partisans. We have people of the left, people of the right. We try to have a little bit of everyone's perspective at the table, and I think that is what makes us unique.
Yeah, it's not only a perspective on the news, but it also is the choice of what makes news. And I do want to congratulate you on recently receiving it just a few weeks ago at the Women's Media Center Annual Gala Awards, at receiving the Visible and Powerful Award in Media. It was so well-deserved. So congrats on that.
It was so exciting. Yeah, I was just so overwhelmed, just the people I was standing near at the red carpet. It was really overwhelming. Sally Field, I'm such a huge fan of her. I'm a big fan of all of the people who were awarded. And it was a real honor. It was really great.
Okay. No way not to engage it, because this is the 2 days before the election. The effect of all these last minute bombshells, whether it's the FBI thing or anything else, do you think that will suppress voters at the polls? Do you think it will make a huge difference? Do you think there's any way to even know?
I think at this point, very little will change the fundamentals of the race, to use another sort of well-worn phrase. I think what we have is a country that's incredibly divided, incredibly partisan. Any new piece of information only heightens partisanship and sends Democrats further into their corner and Republicans further into theirs. There's nothing that's going to turn a Clinton voter into a Trump voter or vice versa. That's just not possible. And I think that the number of people who are, quote, undecided is so infinitesimally small, we overemphasize them because they're sort of interesting for TV. But almost no one is undecided. Almost no one is independent. This notion that there are independents is almost not real either. People lean either to the left or to the right. And studies have shown that independents are either Democratic-leaning and vote almost always for Democrats, or they're Republican-leaning and vote almost always for Republicans. They just, for whatever social or cultural reason, don't want to call themselves Democrats and Republicans. So I think what we really have is a race that's fundamentally tilted toward the Democrat because of the demographics. Hillary Clinton has a lot fewer states to add to her column in order to get to 270. Donald Trump has a steeper uphill climb, but he also is running up the score among white voters, particularly white male voters and white voters without a college degree, in a way that really no candidate has done, maybe since George Wallace or Ronald Reagan. So he's doing some things that are slightly different, but he's still playing in a demographic pool that is so white that it makes it hard for him to win.
Right, right. Well, when you put together the young and men of color and all women or most women, you've got a hell of a coalition, and you've got much more, I think, something that looks like the actual country that we're in, which is refreshing. Let's talk for a minute about the aftermath. You are not only a journalist, but a political commentator. And the press, as we know, when they can't blame anybody else, they blame us. But on the other hand, my beloved colleagues in the press sometimes make me crazy. And the press, at least the suits in the corner office, admittedly, openly, blatantly gave Donald Trump an enormous amount of free time in the first entire, basically year, almost year and a half of the campaign. And then the minute, of course, that they began actually waking up, oh my God, he could win, and began covering him investigatively the way they should have been doing, I think, all along, and the way they've been doing her for 40 years. Then, of course, he cried foul, being thin-skinned. What do you think our colleagues in the press have learned, if anything, from this campaign?
Well, I think one of the things that the media writ large has learned is that you cannot treat any candidacy as entertainment, which I think, in all honesty, Donald Trump was treated as sort of entertainment and not a serious candidate for at least a year. The sense was that he was great for ratings. Les Moonves openly said Donald Trump may not be good for America, but he's great for CBS. Right? He was very open about
I know. It was stunning.
Trump rates. Yeah. And so you had him treated as not a serious candidate, I think, in a lot of ways, and not examined the way the press really, in a way, over-examines Hillary Clinton. There's a piece that Jonathan Allen wrote called The Clinton Rules, which I think is the definitive take on the way the media sees Hillary Clinton and really sees both of the Clintons from this eye of incredible jaundiced suspicion, so that everything they do and say is treated as probably something nefarious, and at least it's worthy of examining whether they've done something wrong. Right. Whereas Donald Trump, is a part of the media. He's sort of a member of the club and was treated as such for a long time. I do think at a certain point it kicked in for a lot of the media that he actually had a chance to be president. And the scrutiny did get a lot tougher. And so now, yes, he gets more airtime, but it's mostly negative. Right. And that's why you're seeing him react. He's used to being sort of lauded by the media, or at least aided by the media. So he's sort of out of balance when the media coverage isn't positive. So I think the media has played an outsized role in this campaign, but it's because Donald Trump is a unique figure. It's almost a Silvio Berlusconi type candidacy, where a member or part of the media is running. It's just never happened before.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's very true. There has been a story floating around for a long time that Trump was involved allegedly in the rape of a 13-year-old girl at Jeffrey Epstein, who is a known sex offender and has been convicted of this, particularly with minors, years ago. And it didn't come to trial because, of course, there were no witnesses, and it was a whole big complicated mess. But now they have a witness, and it's going to be coming to trial in December. And I keep wondering why I see so little of that story.
Yeah. And I think, so here's the thing. I think, first of all, just let's isolate the Access Hollywood tape, right? In 2005, Donald Trump makes this statement that then becomes public during the campaign, that he sort of self-admits to what, at minimum can be described as sexual predation, if not sexual assault.
Yes.
And sort of brags about it and that this is what he does. Now, normally that would be the end of any political campaign. I can't imagine Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, anyone else surviving just that tape.
God, no.
But I think what that tape has done is that it really has called into question whether or not the media is sort of staying away from certain stories like this, the one you're talking about, this lawsuit, really is an error. Because here's the reality. That suit that was filed originally by a Jane Doe was not picked up in the media, in part because it was a Jane Doe, because there was no way to factually corroborate whether even it was a possible true allegation, and because the suit was voluntarily withdrawn. It was originally filed in California. It was voluntarily withdrawn. It was apparently misfiled. It was refiled again in New York, but the problem with the filing made it difficult from a legal and standards point of view to go forward with a story that it wasn't clear it was going to be a solidly filed legal case. I think now, because the case has been filed properly, it does have a judge attached to it and a court date attached to it in December. I think there really is a valid question. I get this question probably more than anything else in my Twitter feed. Why aren't we covering it? Up until a month ago, it wasn't a properly filed case. So it now is a properly filed case. Ironically enough, Dan Abrams, who used to actually work with us at MSNBC, and now he's a legal analyst for ABC News. He has a site called Law News and, of course, Mediaite. His sister is the judge in the case, which makes it even more sort of odd.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, his sister is the judge it goes before. It doesn't go to trial until December. So technically it would take place after the election.
Right.
But I think really what James Comey did to sort of make a non sequitur is that he has opened this question of whether ongoing legal proceedings that may or may not have merit, that may or may not be valid cases, can become fodder for an active political campaign within 2 weeks of an election.
Right.
What Comey did is so outrageous because in a normal proceeding, what's being done with the rape allegation against Donald Trump is what would be done with every allegation, whether it's against Clinton or Trump. It's thought, by most people that Donald Trump's campaign, Paul Manafort and another top aide, are under active investigation from the FBI right now.
Over the Russia tapes. Over Russia.
That is, exactly. And as Harry Reid has described, that's potentially explosive. But normally what law enforcement does is they say, until this is adjudicated in a way that's solid, until we have some filing, meaning a grand jury is impaneled or somebody is charged, we don't publicly discuss it. And I think that the way that the Trump allegations by the person who was claimed they were 13 years old at the time, that's actually normally how it works.
Right.
We don't just report every lawsuit that's filed against someone that's outrageous or that's potentially explosive. We wait until it proceeds to a point where it's got some legal merit.
Right.
What Comey has done is the opposite. He essentially said, I'm just going to talk about what might be and make it so vague that you can cast an aspersion on just one candidate, but I'm not going to allow the same kind of aspersion on the other one. So I think that because if you combine the 2005 self-admissions by Donald Trump and the new terrain Comey has put us in, I think every legal case now is open for fodder. So it's going to be interesting to see what we do with that and other cases going forward.
Yeah, and at the very least to try to avoid a double standard. Okay, I only have time for really one or two more quick questions. And is there a longed-for get, and in other words, an interview that you would love dearly to do and haven't done yet?
Oh, absolutely. I have long wanted to interview Phil Donahue. Phil Donahue is somebody I grew up listening to, and one of the reasons I'm such a sort of information junkie and political junkie is I grew up on his show, the Phil Donahue show, that was actually preceded the Oprah Winfrey show on my TV dial. And he's such a fascinating brain and such an interesting person. I'm really fascinated by and curious about his take on what's happening now. My other sort of big wish list interviews, Joe Biden, who relentlessly pursue our one-way love for Joe Biden is like nothing else at the end. We adore him, and we sort of have this unrequited love affair with Joe Biden, and he won't get on the show. We also obviously really want to interview Hillary Clinton. We have not been able to land that interview. I hope that she will talk to us before the campaign is out. And then just to wrap it up, I have interviewed Barack Obama before he was president, would love to do so now, and clearly Michelle.
Yes.
Michelle Obama is a fascinating person. I've interviewed her before in the context of Let's Move, but she would be the ultimate interview.
Yeah, she is so incredible. I mean, when I met her and we're standing for a picture and so forth, and I realized how pathetically short I am because she's really gorgeously tall and willowy and stunning. Both of them are. And she said, I'll step out of my shoes. And so she did. And I was so blown away. And of course it didn't help at all because I'm just 5 feet dripping wet and she still is like 45 feet tall, even in her stocking feet. And gorgeous every inch of it. Those are wonderful guests. Maybe if you have any trouble with Donahue, he's a friend, so maybe we can help on that front. But I can't imagine you would have trouble.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, we're trying. I think he's a very interesting guy, and so many people like me, he got us even more interested in politics and in issues because the way he did interviews and the way he broke issues down was really unique in all of television. He's a terrific person.
It was.
And I chat with them sometimes.
And back in the I guess it was in the 70s, when I first did the show, I had said I didn't debate women's issues. I mean, anymore that, these were issues of human rights. And because they'd asked, would I debate a Playboy, editor? And I said no. And then when I showed up, there was I was informed that there would be together, sharing the same, segment of the Playboy editor. And I called women. At that point, it came from Dayton, Ohio. I hit the phones. We didn't have email. We didn't have, texting. And women came from all over the state. They drove all night. And you know what? The show was live. And Joy, we seized the show. And Phil, God love him, handed over the mic, and women took over the show, and it was one of his highest rating shows. So there's a hilarious backstory there. Yeah, there you go.
Love that. That's fabulous.
Anyway, love you. You're just fantastic. Congratulations on AM Joy 10 to 12, Saturdays and Sundays. It's the other side of the real world, if you want real news and real perception. And thank you for everything you do and for being with us at this traumatic time and through this election. Thank you so much for your voice.
Well, thank you, Robin. And the election, thankfully, is almost done.
Hallelujah. And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. Let's talk about the FBI. Today, at the FBI, women hold 12% of 220 senior agent positions, including 9 who run field offices in places like Los Angeles, Oklahoma City, Louisville, Kentucky, and Knoxville, Tennessee. That is a decline from 2013, when women held about 20% of senior agent jobs, and 15 women ran field offices. It seems to be going backwards. Of the Bureau's 13,523 agents overall, 2,683, or about 20%, are women, and about 83% of the agents overall are, you guessed it, European American, white boys. It wasn't until after J. Edgar Hoover's death in 1972 that women were accepted at all as agents. The people at the agency who carry guns, who run investigations, and who are at the heart of the FBI's extremely macho culture. It took another 2 decades before Berdina G. Passanelli, known as Birdie, was appointed the first female agent to run a field office. Her assignment was Anchorage, Alaska. FBI officials claim that they can't explain completely the step backward for women in leadership roles at the Bureau, but they claim that retirements and the timings of openings are partly responsible, and they say it's a worrisome trend. Women cite 3 important reasons so few women are in the FBI's senior ranks. First, the FBI's path to promotion is often less appealing to women, at least so a number of former and current female agents told the New York Times. FBI agents can be transferred at a moment's notice, and that often requires leaving a family behind. And traditionally, it's meant that men in the Bureau have to uproot without their children and their spouses for long stretches of time. And it sort of is assumed, I think, by the Bureau, and the women say by a lot of the women themselves, that women are less willing to make that sacrifice. Second, women say the FBI doesn't have enough high-ranking female role models or mentors. Well, duh. Although women hold senior agent jobs, a woman has never been in charge of a large FBI operational division like counterterrorism, which in the post-9/11 world has been dominated by men who went on to bigger jobs, including the leadership. A woman has never been even deputy director, and certainly never director. Not long ago, a woman did achieve being the head of the Bureau's Science and Technology branch. That's Amy Hess. But in general, you need a magnifying glass to find them. A third problem, women say, is that far fewer women apply for top FBI jobs than men. For every dozen or so applicants for a senior job, only 1 or 2 are women. In part, of course, that's because there are fewer women in the agency to begin with. So the problem feeds back on itself. Female agents also have complained about the macho culture that is not particularly welcoming. They've repeatedly sued the FBI, female agents have, for sexual harassment and for discrimination. This very year, 2016, a former agent accused her male co-workers in the Denver office of behaving inappropriately and making disparaging comments. According to her lawsuit, a male agent was overheard talking about a female colleague saying, quote, "I hope she quits. She can stay at home in the kitchen," close quote. This is just disgusting. The agency claims that it has a better record of women in senior agent positions, about 16%, than other federal law enforcement agencies, but the bar is set pretty low. That includes the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Only the Secret Service had a slightly higher percentage of women in senior agent positions, and I bet anything that's because they have to be able to accompany women in high-profile and vulnerable positions. Female agents claim that they will know the FBI's made progress when a woman is finally put in charge of counterterrorism, criminal investigations, counterintelligence, or is appointed at least as a deputy director. For now, the stars in all those divisions are overwhelmingly male. So while we're talking about and looking at the FBI, Director Comey and his colleagues could use a woman's touch, and they might not be making quite so many egregious errors if there were more women there. In fact, they wouldn't. But as it is now, it's surreal. Time for another short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and when I come back, we're going to be talking with a woman who herself is a distinguished judge and was the Secretary of Education for the state of Virginia, and who now finds herself facing the strange position of possibly becoming the second lady of the United States. And what does second lady mean? Don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And welcome back yet again to my next guest, who is Anne Holton, an American lawyer and judge who served as the Secretary of Education for the Commonwealth of Virginia. She herself is the daughter of the governor of Virginia, a principled Republican back when they existed, Linwood Holton Jr. And when he was governor and she and her siblings were growing up, he sent them to predominantly black schools to set a model for what a principled South, in fact, could do on desegregation of schools. She graduated magna cum laude from Princeton with a degree in economics and then attended and graduated law from Harvard Law School. She worked as an attorney for the Legal Aid Society, and eventually she was appointed as a judge for the Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court for the city of Richmond, and eventually became its chief judge. She is the only person, other than Thomas Jefferson's daughter, Martha Jefferson Randolph, to both spend her childhood growing up in the governor's mansion of Virginia and then return to it as, quote, First Lady, because her husband, the man who's lucky enough to be married to Anne Holton, by the way, is Tim Kaine, who is Hillary Rodham Clinton's running mate in his case for Vice President of the United States. Here is Anne Holton. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live, Anne Holton. May I call you Anne?
Oh, please. And I'd love to call you Robin if that's okay.
Oh, you bet. Absolutely. No question. I didn't know whether to call you Judge Holton or Secretary Holton, because you've had such a distinguished career yourself, both as a judge and as Secretary of Education in Virginia. And now here you are poised, it looks like, if all goes in the direction we think it might go, to be the so-called Second Lady of the United States. Leaving aside for a moment how silly First and Second Ladies as the titles were, since there won't be a First Lady, what in God's name are you gonna? How do you see this role for you?
Well, what they're going to call me, everybody's just going to have to figure out. But the Second Lady thing, I think we'd probably all be ready to get rid of anyway. So maybe we can use the fact that there's no First Lady as a way to throw over the title. What do you think?
That would be so terrific. That would be a side bonus. That would just be fantastic. And of course, you kept your own name when you married Tim Kaine. Which Hillary tried to do. It was the first time she ran afoul of the establishment, and when he was, was a problem in Arkansas because they didn't like their first lady keeping her first name and keeping her own name and being a lawyer, and you pulled it off.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a amazingly sad chapter, literally a chapter in her living histories book. But yes, and it's interesting. It wasn't that. I think that it was just a difference of 7 or 8 years. I'm just a few years behind her, and when I came along, it wasn't particularly hard. My husband, I didn't ask him to change his name. He didn't ask me to change mine. Yeah. And I didn't get any flack for it. I worry about today that the pendulum is swinging back enough that I hope young people feel free to do whatever feels right for them.
I hope so.
Today.
That would be really good. What do you think, given that your focus in the past has been on education and on families and on children in foster care and back on education, do you think that might be the subject that you would focus on in this interesting position that we don't yet have a name for?
Yes, I hope so, Robin. What Hillary has asked me to do on the campaign really is quite specifically to talk to teachers and educators, parents and students, and bring feedback back to the campaign. And I will do whatever I can to help her govern successfully. But I would be most honored if I can continue to do that role. I loved my work as Virginia's Secretary of Education, and particularly loved working with my educators. We've got great stuff going on, and we've been asking our schools to do more with less for too long, and I would love to help turn the tables on that a little bit.
Yeah, I saw, and I recommend to my listeners to go and see your TED Talk, which is online, when you were Secretary of Education, which itself is very revealing and encouraging, both about you and what you were doing. And I mean, we need all hands on deck with education. I mean, one of the reasons it seems to me why people can get very anti-government. I mean, there's many reasons, most of them odious, but one of the reasons is they don't understand how government works. So 36% of Americans can't name the 3 branches of government. And when Trump says things like, I will impose a constitutional amendment, they have no idea what a constitutional amendment entails. So and
even he doesn't even know what's already in the Constitution.
Oh no, least of all. But I suddenly
definitely need to send him back to school.
Oh, you bet. I suddenly find myself on this campaign to bring civics back into school. Remember civics? I loved civics.
Yeah, and you know who has done great leadership on that? You probably, if you haven't interviewed her, you should. Mm-hmm. Justice O'Connor has been leading an initiative on the rule of law and just helping folks understand the importance of having, and that not all countries do have just the basic premise that we have laws that apply equally to everybody and that are fairly administered by courts.
Right.
It's kind of, it's not a sexy topic, but it's so crucial.
It's absolutely
crucial.
Yes,
I agree. We need our schools. We need our schools to be stepping up the game on civics education. I agree.
Yeah, and if people don't understand what's at stake, they don't understand why they have to defend it or why they should respect it, A few words about you and Tim Kaine. I mean, you are such an interesting two people, separately and together, because you seem to have really walked the walk. Your father, starting with your own life and your father, who, when he was governor of Virginia, in response to a federal court decision desegregating, you sent you and your siblings to predominantly black schools. So growing up in that context in Virginia, back at that point was an amazing experience that he let his kids have and demonstrated to the state. And then you went on and there was Princeton and the degree in economics, and then you and Tim met when you were doing a legal assistance program. Am I right on prisoners, civil rights for prisoners?
That's exactly right. I recruited him into the prison project and recruited him into my life at the same time.
Oh, this was very smart. And then you were an attorney for the Central Virginia Legal Aid Society, and this is your movement people, as we would have referred to you in the 70s. You're real
thank you.
Social justice activist.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you. That the court where I eventually served as a juvenile domestic relations court judge was just down the hill from the school that I helped integrate as a 12-year-old. And it's pretty deep in my blood. I'd like to say the stronger together thing it did not start recently for Tim and me. And my dad, I'm very proud of what my dad did at a time when prior Southern governors were leading massive resistance.
Exactly.
And all we did was go to school and make friends like every other 6th and 7th and 8th grader does, but we did it at a time when the spotlight was shining on our efforts to make Virginia a model of race relations, and we've come a long way since then.
Yes, you have. I mean, and then you went into the issue of foster care, and when you were, quote, First Lady of Virginia. Talk a bit about that.
Well, I got to know, Robin, these remarkable young people when my court included jurisdiction over, we heard cases were about children who had been abused and neglected and whose families, for whatever reason, weren't able to properly care for them and were taken into the foster care system. And I just came to be such an admirer of these tough, resilient, very strong-willed young people trying to make a successful path for themselves, and was very honored then when I left the bench when Tim was governor to help work to ensure every child, including teenagers who didn't think they needed families, need families. And we worked hard to make sure every child has a permanent family and a pathway to a successful future.
Do you have any idea, Anne, how comforting it is to many of us, I think more of us than I could number, that people as principled as yourself will, we assume, it looks like, be in a position with a bully pulpit to begin to heal this country after this, to say the least, fractious election. I mean, the fallout on kids alone, I'm sure, given your past in terms of education, you're aware of the new studies that show that violence is up in schools, that kids themselves are bullying immigrant kids and Muslim kids, that teachers are having trouble in their classrooms because of racism and sexism. The kids see it on the television, and there's so much healing to be done. Talk about what you think you can do, because you strike me as so much the sane kind of voice who could do a lot.
Well, thank you. I really think it's going to be an all hands on deck effort. I'm so proud that Hillary chose the motto "Stronger Together." She chose that over a year ago, not knowing where we would be today in this crazy campaign season. But it is a motto that reminds us that, our diversity is our strength, and that's diversity across all kinds of things, yes. Ethnicity and gender and political perspective even, and geography. And we do have, it's going to be an important part of her leadership, and all of us are going to have to chip in after Election Day and help figure out how to bring people back together. It is the heart of our country's history that we are a nation of immigrants, and that we're stronger when we recognize that diversity is part of our strength. But we've lost a little bit of sight of that, haven't we?
Well, yeah. I mean, it hasn't been coincidental. I think it's been an intent to destroy it from some quarters, and we've got to get it back for everybody's sake. It is true that this election, because it's one of the things that's at stake is the first woman president, way overdue, I would say, in 240 years. And the women's movement, and women in general are around the world are very excited about that. Isn't it cool?
Yes. Well, and you say women around the world. One of the funny things is in this great nation where we are such leaders in so many things, we're a little behind the curve on this.
Oh, we? Yes, we are. There's many countries that have made it there first. You absolutely. But somehow I think in many people's eyes, rightly or wrongly, this is the most powerful country in the world. And so to have a woman at the helm here makes a great difference. But I can see Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton dancing in their graves.
Well, and you and so many other folks who helped bring us to this point, I need to convey all of our thanks to you for helping us get to this point where a woman can be taken seriously as a candidate and absolutely will be our next president.
Well, and Anne, I think I have one more question and then one more little closing. The question is, do you really play the violin and do you really clog dance?
I played the violin as a kid.
Yeah.
Somebody thinks I still play it, but no, it would be too painful for anybody to hear the streets across the strings now. But I do clog. I learned how to clog in a folk dance group when I was in high school, and I don't know if you know mountain music or that old time way of dancing, but it's a great fun thing, and if the right music is on, I am one of those people that cannot resist.
I can see this coming to the halls of power. I can also see that in future, since we won't know what to call the previously termed second lady. I think that from here on in, it will be called the Anne Holton. So 100 years from now,
there we go.
That will be fantastic.
I say, call me. I'll go back to where we started. Call me in.
Yes, with her own name. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Travel safe. Good luck on Tuesday, and love to Hillary and Tim and the crew.
My husband, he's a great feminist too. He'll be a great part of the team.
Okay, yeah. We need everybody on. Boy, do we need every hand on deck.
Thanks.
One last break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I will return in just a moment with some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again to some fighting words. Well, we're finally almost there. After an interminable campaign that feels as if it began in 1920. This has been such an abnormal election, with insanity spewed at us so heavily and steadily that the at first sour taste in our mouths has turned to regular daily nausea. Politically aware people also know, with a sense of dread, that a heavy workload awaits us starting November 9th, no matter who wins the presidency. At this moment, it looks like Hillary's lead is holding, but since Trump has already proclaimed he won't acknowledge a win by her, and since some GOP congressmen have already announced they want to go 4 years without approving any Supreme Court justice she might appoint, and they will begin impeachment proceedings the moment she's sworn in, well, that's a heavy workload ahead. I resent the fact that the election for our first woman president, an occasion for congratulating each other on all the work we've done to get us here, has been stolen from us by the Trumpian climate of bigotry, anti-democracy, threats, and violence. Oh, speaking of which, a practical insert here. Voters who experience any problems at the polling place can call the following numbers for a nonpartisan hotline staffed by trained volunteers who can answer questions and notify election officials of violations. For English, the number is 866-OUR-VOTE, OURVOTE. For Spanish, 866-VEYVOTE, VEYVOTE. And for Asian languages, 866-API-VOTE. Look, in these last days, we have to reclaim who we are and remember not just what we're fighting against, but what we're fighting for. It's been 100 years since the first woman was elected to Congress, and it's impossible to estimate the effect of a female presidency on this country and on the world. Sexism won't vanish if we have a female president any more than racism disappeared with a black president, but it makes a difference. And if Barack Obama disappointed some pockets of the African American community because he had to be president of all the people, and if a woman president disappoints some feminists suffering from terminal purity because she would have to be president of all the people, well, I say it's our turn to be disappointed. I do find myself oddly on the verge of tears these days, because it's been a long fight, and I don't just mean the century-long battle for women's suffrage. When I became a feminist, I was already a published writer and activist in the civil rights and anti-war movements, and I regarded myself as a revolutionary, non-oppressed woman. So I went to one of the early consciousness-raising groups to give those women some real politics. A Marxist analysis I wince now to remember. Fortunately, they got to me before I got to them. There were no laws against marital rape or acquaintance rape back then in the mid-1960s. Want ads in the newspaper were divided by gender. Abortion was illegal, and no pharmacist would sell over-the-counter contraceptives. When I married, I was forced by law to change all my legal documents, driver's license, bank accounts, voter registration, to my husband's name, even though I continued using my name as a writer. The right wing of this country were horrified by us early feminists and wanted to jail us, and did, while the left wing decided to screw us, literally and figuratively. I was never one of those who thought the ultimate goal would be to have a woman president, and after all these decades, I still know that a woman commander-in-chief is not the end-all, be-all for feminist revolution and transformation of the planet. But it makes a difference. I remember once flying back from some speaking date where, because of bomb threats, they had to call in police and dogs to sweep the auditorium before I spoke. I remember changing planes in Chicago's O'Hare Airport and being stuck there with flight delays in a snowstorm. I'd bought a present for my kid, who was then maybe about 4 years old. It was a ritual to bring him a small present when I traveled, which back then was a lot. This time it was a little battery-operated dolphin tub toy. You pressed the blowhole in its head, and it supposedly swam around the tub. I'd bought it at the airport I left from, whatever college town in God's name that had been. But now, at 3 a.m., I sat in a deserted O'Hare airport. Back then, there were no 24-hour open food courts. There was only a popcorn machine, and I was famished, so I sat, carry-on bag at my feet, clutching my dolphin and eating stale popcorn. The things you remember. I recall how dry my eyes and skin felt from flying, how brittle my fingernails were, and how one particular hangnail was driving me nuts. I'd slept about 4 hours the night before and the night before that, because women wanted to stay up talking after the speeches, but then I had to catch the early flight to the next place in the morning. I sat there, reminding myself that this was the life of an organizer, and no whining allowed. But I felt grainy and exhausted and desperate to get home. And I chuckled to myself, thinking of one of the questions at the last speech. How long do you think it will be before we ever have a woman president in this country? You know, it was so far from my mind that I hadn't known how to answer this young woman, wanting to say to her instead, "Look, Women are denied entrance to certain restaurants, schools, entire professions. Women are dying from back alley illegal abortions. Women aren't paid equally, and we lack affordable child care, and we're beaten and harassed and raped and prostituted and trafficked, and that's just in this country. Instead, I smiled and answered, not in my lifetime, I think, but maybe in yours. So I refuse to let you now, and me be robbed of this moment. This is history, and we're the ones making it. Let flags fly from the rooftops and trumpets sound, while Stanton and Truth and Anthony rise and dance. You dance too. It's time. And when you do vote, do so with celebration in your heart and a radiant, joyful smile on your face. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and be sure to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMCLive.com for the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and at iTunes worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. And you can check out my own website and blog at robinmorgan.net and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, and our founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.